obviously being white helped it. You know what I'm saying? It like amped it up.
Oh, so that interview was 4 or 5 hours worth of content?
Yeah.
Condensed to like...
The story doesn't get fully told, so it gets told in a way that's not fully accurate. Like they said,
Ruslan.
In the Netflix documentary, they made it look like you kind of just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think what I learned, especially going through that doc, was a lot of those timelines were a little bit off. The story doesn't get fully told, so it gets told in a way that's not fully accurate. Like they said, I got cut from a bunch of teams and then got opportunity. It's like, well, I know where they got that because during my interview, I told them how I got cut from the BCI, which was AAU back then, and there was one all-star team per age group. Yeah. So I got cut from that, but then I got held back on the junior. So yeah, I did get cut from varsity and cut from there, but it's not like I still wasn't like playing, so it sounds a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I did come, I mean, to AND1, I did come out of nowhere. I mean, Oregon, they didn't expect the contestant to be from Oregon.
Well, the fact that you were on the previous mixtape.
Okay, yes. So Hot Sauce and Sick With It, they like remembered me.
Yeah.
They remember me because I think I had a sort of a distinct look, but they remember me. The other guys didn't. But yeah, so a little bit familiarity, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So AND1 comes around, you're on it. I want to, you made the Netflix documentary. It was really dope. It was really
I thought they did a great job of storytelling.
Yeah.
I had a critical, I was a little more, like, my feedback a little more critical just because I lived it. But like, honestly.
How long did it take to shoot your parts? Is that like a long, exhaustive process? Or was that pretty like, sit down for one interview and they got everything they needed from you?
That's it.
That's it.
4 or 5 hours in 2020 before COVID.
So, so that interview was 4 or 5 hours worth of content?
Yeah.
Condensed to, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a trip, man. So, okay, so tell me, which parts did you think were kind of inaccurate or not the most cleanest timeline?
Yeah, so like when they showed like the Nike commercial, Nike Freestyle, they made it sound like it was after the ESPN show actually started, but it was before I even got on there. And that had nothing to do, that didn't tamper with AND1's business one bit. Like Nike commercial was dope. The freestyle, I loved it. Jay Will was on there. Yep. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Jay Will, just shot video. But like, it didn't tamper with the business. They made it sound like it like weighed in on AND1 and took away from or whatever. But it was like one commercial and done. It wasn't a lifestyle. Like AND1 people are lifestyling AND1 street ball. It had
so you're saying this came after the ESPN reality show?
No, the commercial they framed it like it did. But I think it's in storytelling. You got to figure out how to tell your stories because if you make a big deal about something at a certain point, it might not feel right. It's about flow too.
Right.
So that happened before I was even on AND1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Nike Freestyle. And then...
So the Vince Carter dunk, all that happened before you were on AND1?
I think that was 03. That was 03.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. And then, so same year, around the same time. No. That was before. It was before. Yeah, it was 02 or 01, I think.
Wow.
But also...
so you're saying that was inconsequential to AND1 having any kind of blip in their business model? Was the Vince Carter wearing the AND1s when he did that dunk, and then Nike signing him and doing this kind of street ball commercial? You're saying it wasn't as big of a deal as they made it seem in the doc.
AND1 was going crazy until those owners sold the company. So that was one of my critiques of it, which... To me, I think the doc was dope, though. Like, a story told really dope. But I think there was a couple things that could have added value. Like, yeah, so the company went down. They made it sound like we fought a lot, and then, like, envy got in the way, and then a downfall. But it's like, no, it's like when the owners sold the company, split $100 million a few different ways, or however much it was, that's when it started going downhill. Because it got in the hands of people who didn't know anything about basketball, much less street ball. You know, and then they brought in some guys to run the brand from, like, they were at, like, Adidas and Reebok. But they were like OGs. They weren't really into street ball. They were more like NBA guys. Like one dude, you know, he was a good businessman though. He like made a shoe for Kobe, made a shoe for Shaq. So he was more into that NBA circle. The street ball was like too off to the side for them. So they weren't into it. So they tried to make AND1 like this well-rounded machine, but it just wasn't ready for that.
Got it.
And they didn't have the dollars to do that. You got to pay an NBA player multi-million-dollar deal, a top-tier guy.
Yeah.
So they didn't have the money at that time, and it was just different. So that's when it went downhill. But I think also some of my critique was they didn't have our best highlights. You know, like you're talking about why AND1 was so big and the effect that the splash it had in a culture. But it didn't show those, like a lot of, like for example, not even just biasly, it didn't show my best highlights, but also like Hot Sauce, right? They talk about how he changed the game, which he literally changed basketball. And he said in the doc, he said he was the most popular basketball player on earth at one point. I think if he's not accurate, he was top 5. He literally changed the game, but they didn't show like there's moments where he shakes somebody up, they fall, and then everybody runs on the court. It didn't show a lot of those movements. It kept showing him like just a blip of a trick move. And then like even for me, it showed like one of my best career highlights, but that was it. It showed like kind of like random clips, which it didn't like completely devalue the doc, but would have added some value, I think.
I think it would have added value to kind of better highlight where everyone's at now.
Exactly, and you could have built it. You show why hot sauce is like a handle god. You know what I'm saying? Show why I got to where I'm at, you know, and then it would encapsulate the energy of the moment a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's how I feel like. But who knows? Did they have rights to all the footage? You know, was the guy who was pulling clips, was he a fan of it back then? I think all those things weigh in, right? You never know. But the dude who directed it, he was dope, and overall, it was pretty dope.
Yeah. So a few things about the documentary. So they make it seem like there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of issues, and they also kind of this is going to sound weird, but they also kind of positioned you like you were hot because you were a white guy. Like, well, Professor, you know, he like it had this weird aura around like you were popular because that, and I was like, I don't know how much of that was accurate in hindsight. Like you were really shaking people up. You know what I mean? Like at least from when I was in high school and I remember, I didn't see it as, oh, this guy is getting a pass because he's a white dude. You know what I mean? Like, did you kind of gather some of that from the doc, and was there some of that energy on the ground?
Well, I knew all the guys so well that are giving the sound bites. Like even my homie G-Lock, he was a cameraman. He was on there giving an interview, and I think he's the one who said when a white guy can do something in the hood and do it well, he said it amplifies that much. But then he goes on, he said, but Professor was like the real deal.
The real deal.
So I think it was both. I think it was both, and I didn't even know at the time. I'm just having a great time. I didn't know what was going on. I was a kid, you know. I think it was both. I mean, obviously being white helped it. You know what I'm saying? It like amped it up, of course. But I think what they were speaking to is, was I better than Sick with it or AO or what? No? You know what I mean? Like no. I happen to have an incredible summer that I couldn't duplicate, and you know, it made a dent in the culture. It was really impactful for me. But those guys are better players. So I think when they say it, they say, no, dude was good, but you know, being white boosted it. Like some people might have thought I was the best player on that one. Yeah, you could have got that narrative too, right? Some people. I remember seeing a picture. This is when it really bugged me out. There was a picture of people's favorite players, and there was like a voting poll on a website, and it had Michael Jordan, Vince Carter, Jason Williams, and myself on there. It's like,
wow,
who's your favorite player?
Really?
Yeah, and then like I wasn't even last. I don't know who was last. I wasn't even last on there. Obviously, MJ's up there. But I was just the fact that graphic even existed, the fact that even a kid could have made that or whoever. Yes. To me, I was like hyped that even somebody would have made that.
In terms of the structuring of the AND1 situations, towards the end of the documentary, they go, had we had them signed up as sponsored athletes and not as employees.
No, he was saying had we treated as employees instead of endorsers.
Okay, so it's the opposite. Okay.
Yeah, and that was unrealistic though, because like hindsight's 20/20, right? Yeah. You're not going to do an employee situation. And plus, he was saying it like we could have gave these guys stock options as employees. But my thing was like, you can do that in an endorsement deal too. And it was
That's what I thought. I thought they were saying the opposite. I thought they were saying you guys were employees, and had they given you deals of athletes, they could have given you stock options.
The truth is, it's just not big money. Like it was an endorsement deal for less than $100K, at least for the first guys' first few years. You know what I mean? By the time we ended, I was making some good money, and I know some guys did at a certain point. But yeah, so that was an interesting take. But I don't know. I mean, do those guys feel that bad about the situation? They're not trying to call and mend things up. They ain't got no money for nobody today. So I don't know if they feel that bad. You know, I tweeted that the other day. Like, I said, hey, the AND1 owners, because I don't feel like I'm owed. I came on right before the peak. And then it went crazy, and that got bought out like 2 years later. And then started.
So you did 2 seasons with them?
I did 6.
Wait. You came on before. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I came on 03. 03. And it ended 08 was the last year.
Got it. So you did 6 seasons.
6 seasons.
And you said initially it didn't pay great, but towards the end it started paying really well.
Yeah. And it was great. It was all great for me. I'm 18. I thought like a couple $100 was big. So, so you know, my first deal I think was like 70 or 80K for the year or something like that. I'm thinking I'm rich. About 3 PS2s. I'm on a video game. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't tripping at all. So I don't feel like I was owed. I branded after things happened, but I feel like it's not as hot and cold. Like the players might say, hey, we're owed millions. The owners obviously said it wasn't worth paying anything. I feel like maybe somewhere in the middle would have been the most moral and just thing. But I mean, you know how it goes, like $1 million buyouts. Nobody's like, how can I be courteous with this? Nobody, unless you're a believer, maybe. Yeah. You know what I mean? I don't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's an interesting tension between like what would have been the generous thing to do versus what was legally agreed upon in the agreements. You know, and the ethics of it.
It's confusing territory.
It's confusing,
I feel
man.
like they could have been nice to give everybody couple hundred K.
Yeah.
Because the thing about it, if they sold, I can't remember what the exact amount was, somewhere 130 mil. Maybe I'm off.
It was north of 100 mil.
Yeah, if it's north of 100 million between 4 dudes or 3 dudes, which is funny. I only met one of the guys. I don't even know those other dudes, the owners. What's giving everybody 200K? And I'm just talking about the original 7 or 8 dudes. I'm not talking about, because by the time they sold it, we had like 17 guys under contract or something like that.
Okay.
So that was my thought.
Yeah. But you also said you don't feel any type of way about it.
I was blessed to be a part of it. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I was blessed to like play with such great talent. One of my OGs, shout out to Headache, he was in an interview recently and he said that I am really like a professor. He said, I studied all the AND1 players and I got a little bit of everybody in my game. And it's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. You know what I mean? Like, Headache said that. The irony is like, I just was all like reposting on like World Star and other sites for doing like one of Headache's moves. And then like I do Ali Mo's moves. Obviously, I had a lot of influence from Hot Sauce, AO. So I feel like I was honored to play for them. And then, you know, when it ended, I'm only 23. I was only 23 when it ended. So like I had a lot of career left and it just made me that much better. And I was able to me, not branding never made any sense. Like, of course we're going to brand. Like, if anyone ain't going to do it, I got to do it.
Yep.
I didn't even reach the peak of my game or career or anything. So that's how I viewed it.
Yeah. In the documentary, you don't have to talk about this if you don't want to.
I'll talk about anything. It's all good.
But they made it definitely seem like there was some debauchery going on these tours. And they said you had a gang of groupies. Hey, if you want to see the full podcast that this clip is from, be sure to sign up for our Patreon community for as little as $5 a month. This is a great way to partner with what we're doing here and help us continue making content. So be sure to look for the link in the description of this video or the pinned comment below. I'll see you over there. Peace.
And it said that Simeon blessed God.